Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Megan Burton of the Kitsap Regional Public Library in Washington State as she presents her webinar, Make, Do, Share, Sustainable STEM Programming for Youth. It's all yours, Megan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction and thank you for the warm welcome. I am so happy to be here with all of you. Uh, like Beth said, my name is Megan and I'm the STEM and Learning Supervisor at the Kitsap Regional Library in Washington State. We're kind of a small and rural library. And in 2015, Kitsap Regional Library received a 3-year National Leadership Grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or the IMLS, to design and implement a sustainable STEM programming model for public libraries. The project, Make, Do, Share, collects tools and resources to support staff in planning, facilitating, and improving STEM outcomes for and with youth. I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to share with all of you. And in this webinar, we're going to look deeper at why libraries are investing in STEM learning, how you can become a facilitator by using the Make, Do, Share tools, and what this work kind of looks like. Throughout our time together, please feel welcome to ask questions. Beth, of course, will be moderating the chat box, so please feel welcome to type in your questions there. We'll have a few pauses here and there, and that'll be a great time to discuss your questions. And I'm hoping that at the end of our time together, we'll have a chance to have some open discussion. All right. So first, I want to start off by sharing about where I'm from and where some of this work originated. This photo, I feel, illustrates Kitsap County very well. Kitsap is pretty dynamic. We have a population shift every 6 months due to the active duty Navy ships returning or leaving our military base. We have many adults who commute to work to Seattle using our ferry system, which you can see in this lovely photo. And we have generations of families who've been here for thousands of years in our tribal communities. So we have rural, disconnected areas. We have affluent seaside hamlets. We have a semi-urban downtown area with a high poverty rate. And of course, there are rising rates of unsheltered conditions for people all over the county. And as you can see, our library system is actually pretty disconnected as well. We try to serve the areas where we can find the most patrons gathering. And so our 9 locations serve a little over 250,000 people, but Kitsap County is pretty large and spread out, as you can see here on this map. Now, in the midst of designing and facilitating STEM programming across Kitsap County, we had some major aha moments. Although the county is spread out and each branch location experiences vastly different challenges, we're starting to see some patterns emerge from STEM programs that our librarians were facilitating. We learned a lot through practice, failure, lots of iterating, lots of feedback, and plenty of learning moments. What we began to see was that our after-school STEM programs often looked like this. Does this look familiar? They were mirror images of formal classrooms. And here you can see a group of teens participating in a coding class. They arrive at different times. There's very little peer interaction. They take a seat usually near someone they know, and they're usually not meeting anyone new. And they might go through steps with an instructor leading the class through several coding exercises. And while this is a great model for getting the content knowledge out there, we realized that this was replicating what many of the participants were already doing in school. Libraries are amazing partners for schools, as I'm sure many of you know. But we have something really special to offer that's a bit different. We have informal learning environments. But informal doesn't necessarily mean completely unstructured. Plus, it can be a little bit scary to take a step back during a program that you're facilitating if you haven't provided enough instruction. Okay, here you go. However, the pattern that I was referring to, what we noticed was that youth learn best when they're connecting, when they're making social connections, when they can express themselves freely. And so I welcome you all to definitely, during our time together, express yourselves, your questions and your comments. That's how we learn best. It became clear that the secret ingredient to fostering informal learning environments at the library was youth voice. And by listening, we could create a more balanced structure. The Free Child Project defines youth voice as the perspectives, ideas, experiences, knowledge, and actions of young people. Youth voice doesn't mean talking loudly or shouting to be heard. And it's not about drowning out other people's voices, including adults. Youth voice is about considering the perspectives and ideas of young people, respecting what everyone has to say, taking risks, listening, sharing, and working together. And so, as we set out to strike a balance between guided instruction and discovery learning, we could in turn create supportive learning environments. This model is called guided discovery learning. It centers the learner, but gives them enough support from caring instructors. So how do we create programs that are structured and unstructured? How do we foster a learning environment that encourages youth to build social connections while engaging in high-quality educational content? The answer that we found was through guided discovery learning. That is among some of the skills that I hope to prepare you with throughout the Make, Do, Share framework and our introduction of it. And before we dive deep into how to build your own STEM programming with the Make, Do, Share Playbook, I want to share with you all some of what is at stake. So here's our big question. Why should libraries and librarians invest in STEM learning? You might be asking yourself that right now.
We have a few people typing. Yeah. Is maybe some people answering.
Yeah, I would love to see that. We can pause here for just a moment.
Why STEM instead of STEAM?
Well, for us, it was to align with our schools. Many of our schools are calling out STEM, and we are definitely going to discuss why STEM is really important to college and career success. Now, STEAM is excellent, and I believe that art is part of STEM, absolutely 100%. What you call it, that depends on you and your community, but the focus here will be predominantly on STEM because of my location and because of our schools here. Talk with your schools and find out exactly what your community is focusing on. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
All right. So, great question. Thank you so much, Erin. Now, many of you may be familiar with the summer slide, or the idea that students, on average, forget what they've learned during the school year over the course of summer vacation. You may also know that students who are of a lower socioeconomic group may be the most impacted by the summer slide. It's by and large why we do summer reading programs. We're supporting learning during the gap between the end of one school year and the beginning of another to help bridge the achievement gap. Now, what's remarkable to me is to see how this phenomenon of losing a connection to learning is not unique to just summer. Over the lifetime of a student, their engagement in learning decreases. It's the reason why you can ask any kindergartner what they want to be when they grow up, and they have dozens of dreams. like maybe being a firefighter, an astronaut, or a doctor. But if you ask that same question of a high school senior nearing graduation, what do you want to do after high school? They may just shrug, or they might start to feel really anxious. Seeing these side by side is remarkable. My call to action for all libraries is to be an intervention in a learner's life and help show them that they can achieve their goals with the support of great mentors like all of you. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, growth in STEM-related careers has grown at a rate 3 times faster than that of non-STEM careers. That pace is not expected to slow, as almost all of the 30 fastest growing jobs projected from 2008 to 2018 have now required at least one STEM-related skill. And that's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2010. Now, in Washington State, where I'm from, nearly 45,000 jobs will go unfilled this year. Wow, let that sink in. But after-school programs like those that we offer at libraries offer a very important intervention. We have to acknowledge, first, that we have a leaky pipeline that is in many ways creating systemic barriers to these job openings. And this is not an isolated issue that I'm facing here in Washington. It's a national issue, and meeting this need could never be more urgent than it is right now. The future of our workforce is weighing on the success of how well we can engage and intervene with middle schoolers. I know that sounds surprising. So, in a study completed in 2014, researchers from the University of Chicago found indicators that linked successes in 8th grade to future success in high school and beyond. The report notes that a 3.5 middle school grade point average gave students a 50% higher chance of college success. A 1-point difference in GPAs in 8th grade is linked to a 20% point difference in the likelihood of passing 9th grade math. Wow. Now, in Indiana, your graduation rates are excellent. They're very close to the national average of 84%. I think it might be 0.1% lower. However, before those graduates complete high school, how are we meeting their STEM learning needs? Between 2017 and 2027, STEM jobs in Indiana are projected to grow by 13%, while all other fields will be growing by 7%. With a healthy job growth rate, there will be an increase in demand for workers. So let's say someone who just graduated high school last year is looking at the current job market, maybe wanting to enter one of these fast-growing STEM fields. Math scores tend to be the gatekeeper for taking advanced technology, engineering, or science courses in college, and a higher math score is often a requirement for apprenticeships and STEM field jobs and other STEM field jobs. On average, that student will have been a part of a class that has made some progress in math scores since 2013, as you can see on this graph. A score of 250 on this graph is basic math, while a score of 300 is considered proficient in math. So looking at the scores for current 8th graders in Indiana, some progress can still be made at school and during after-school programs to improve their chances of becoming a successful candidate in the next generation workforce. Mm-hmm. Now, women and people of color make up more than half of Indiana's population, yet they are much less likely to earn STEM degrees or become STEM professionals. I believe that through strong community partnerships, we can build a bridge between success in STEM and major economic returns for the state. The graph on the left shows the gap between men and women who earn computer science degrees in Indiana. Here is where all of that data really hits home to me. The report from the University of Chicago centered on one key factor that would indicate future success. Above all of the statistics and grades in math, standardized testing scores, and overall GPA. Above all of that, the one factor that indicated continued success in that eighth grader's future was attendance. Yeah. So while we as library staff, we might not be able to have direct impact on test scores in formal education settings, there's so much that we can do to improve overall engagement. The reality is, our partners in formal education need support from the whole community to help the next generation find their own successes. As libraries, we must see ourselves in the greater picture of the educational system. With high-quality mentoring and after-school programs that focus on interests, I believe that the gaps that we see in the workforce can begin to close. As key community stakeholders, libraries play a role in collective efforts to address local challenges. You know best about your community and what their learning needs are. Day in and day out, you are answering questions and connecting people to information. If we can consider the equity issues in STEM and keep in mind how much time learners are spending outside of the classroom, you can begin to see how libraries are hubs of learning. Library staff have the skills to support all levels of literacy, and that includes information literacy, digital literacy, maybe even media literacy. If we foster skills in cultural competency, we can also reach socially excluded groups. We are perfectly positioned to help our communities become future ready. Knowing what is at stake and just how much influence we have in a learner's life is really what motivates me to foster STEM learning in libraries. And I hope that you will take some personal note to this as well. As learners age, their learning becomes even more dependent on whether we can provide informal learning opportunities. If we can meet them now, they could become learners for life. So now that we know where we're coming from, let's think about where we're going. These outcomes are used in every Make, Do, Share program at the library. And while they seem simple, they can help you begin to tailor your work toward being more intentional with STEM learning. In many ways, these are similar outcomes to what we would have in every library program, not just STEM. We want to foster interest. We want to provide some new skills. We want to build intrinsic motivation for the learners to continue with whatever may spark their interest. These outcomes allow us to give up some of the power, boost youth voice, and they allow us to be facilitators, not experts. You don't need to have an in-depth knowledge of STEM to make a difference in a learner's life and help them realize their potential. So looking at these outcomes, where are some of you right now? How are you supporting STEM learning in your local community? And before we move on to the next section, now that we've kind of learned a little bit about the why, the next part we're going to talk about the how. But did anybody have any questions or comments that they wanted to share?
This is Beth, and I just wanted to say I think it's so key and so important for all of us librarians to realize that we don't have to be experts. So this is one of the things that I love the most about Make, Do, Share. And I know you're going to tell us more about that, but just wanted to give them a little sneak peek and mention that I think it can be
that
really
is so key to all of this. Yeah, it is intimidating. I completely understand that. And, my background is I was a teen librarian. And, I stumbled into this myself. And I really believe that if you focus on the interest of your community, rather than starting with, okay, I'm going to do a science program or I'm going to do a math program, if you start with what your community is interested in and then you integrate the skills into that, and pretty soon I'm going to teach you guys how to do that, that is really where you start to see a difference in the quality of learning that happens in your STEM programs.
I don't see
All
any
right.
questions or any typing, so.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. All right, so let's jump into the next part. This is the first tool of the Make, Do, Share playbook. Whether you're a seasoned facilitator or maybe you're brand new to creating outcomes like the ones that we just kind of had a sneak peek of, it always seems a little bit easier to invest time and energy and money into stuff like 3D printers, robotics kits, slime, instead of focusing on ways to help you think critically and problem solve with the skills that might come from STEM. And that's kind of like what we were just talking about. You know, you start with the skills, you start with that rather than a specific subject, or in this case, a specific piece of equipment. But it's also true that we live in a time when technology is changing rapidly. Let me tell you right now that the biggest and best STEM tool is not a 3D printer. The best tool you have to support STEM learning at your library is you. It's also the people around you and the community companions in this collective effort. The first part of the Make, Do, Share playbook is called the Roadmap, and it's a tool to help you discover your community. Inside the guide, you'll find helpful tools to get those conversations started, but the work is up to you. I would start by asking who in the community can help you learn. Who do you want to collaborate with? Who are you not reaching? Go out and talk with people. Call up a partner you haven't talked to in a while. Visit a school. Join a new community group. And as you do that, make it a point to test your assumptions. Is there a group in your community that you're not engaging with because of maybe self-doubt, a bad interaction that happened a while ago, or maybe just general distrust? What are some ways that you can build that trust back for them or for yourself? This is so key in designing what your program outcomes should be. Find out what your community is interested in. Start with the interest. I'm going to say that about 1,000,000 times. Start with their interests. You can incorporate STEM skills into virtually any interest. And interest-driven work motivates even the most reluctant participants. Believe me. Most importantly, the roadmap is your personal key to establishing and maintaining a learning ecosystem in your local community. Now, throughout the Make, Do, Share roadmap, which will be available to download, it's completely free for everyone, and you can share it with anyone that you wish. Inside of it, you'll find helpful community discovery worksheets that allow you to track who you're talking with, what you've learned, and maybe what your next steps are. It's really helped me personally with being more intentional about how I interact with partner organizations and who I want to interact with given the scope of a project. What I really like about this way of keeping track of your community conversations is that it's open enough that you could include notes on whether maybe you had a conversation over the phone, if it was by email, maybe you met with someone face to face, maybe it was at a conference or through a mutual contact. You can refer back to this, and when you're planning programs, you're able to really be able to capture community voice. And you can also keep track of any changes if there's been any staff turnover. And I'm going to pause right here. I do see a question here. The Harvard method for community engagement.
Yeah,
That is
I was just asking them if any
yeah.
of their libraries use the Harwood method, which has a similar philosophy. You go out to the community and find out
Yeah.
what they're doing. Um, so
A lot of this was built on kind of doing a survey of just every resource that's out there. And I know we get inundated by resources, so this really collects a lot of that together and creates something kind of more concise, so you don't have to be checking everything all the time just to keep abreast of the information.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there will be a way to get a copy of this community discovery method, the record. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So probably the best return on investment in reaching out to other organizations and individuals in your community is to build on your own continuous learning. Be thinking about who in your community you could connect to co-design and co-create engaging activities at your library. And be aware of what you can bring to the table. Once you have a strong connection with your community partners, you should also consider taking your high-quality library services out on the road, and not just at community information tables, let's say at the fair. But go to where people meet and offer a STEM program there. If you're lucky enough to have a Boys and Girls Club near you or any other after-school programs, try to complement their program. Bring your program there. Don't just compete with their programs. And what we do is portable enough that you could go just about anywhere that people gather and offer your services directly to where the people gather. Camp Create, in this photo, was one of those programs where we had established a really strong connection with several community partners. And on one of the days of the camp, we were actually able to go to the aquarium, and they were engaging in a touch tank, and they also went out on a ship on a floating lab. And that, I mean, is just so exciting. It's what you can do with your community partners. Learning is cultural. Opening your doors to community partnerships and building trust with partners beyond the library is an act of equity. Remember how we said that STEM is an equity issue? You also have to be ready for when those partners are going to lean on you, too. Recently, 2 Suquamish tribe members and the leadership Kitsap team reached out to the Paulsbo Library to begin building on an intergenerational learning program. The goal of their work was to bring together tribal elders and youth to share Indigenous ways of knowing. The program was held at the library and supported by library staff, and also with staff from the Suquamish tribe, their elders, leadership Kitsap, and families of all ages and backgrounds. And it promoted learning experiences that moved across generations, and it also brought the community closer together. The Make Do Share roadmap is all about community engagement. And this tool, it's a little silly, but it's really great. This is something I like to keep in mind when I'm developing for and with my community. I want to make sure that their voice is heard. So we have a tendency to default to programming. What program am I going to do with my community partner? But the Hennepin County Public Library decided to create a spectrum that talks about dessert. Mm-hmm. So let's say we're going to invite our community to come to the library and have some kind of dessert. Are you going to start by saying, like, we're going to have cherry pie for dessert, and that's it? No discussion, no community voice, no youth voice included in that decision-making process? Or are you going to start consulting with them? Maybe you're going to bring them in and involve them in the discussion. Maybe they're choosing from a menu, or maybe you want to collaborate. So let's discuss and decide together what we're going to have for dessert. Maybe we could even shop together or bake it together. And then you can think about how you can empower your community. Whatever you decide that you want for dessert, let's have that. Or maybe you'll just be responsible for bringing dessert. Now, not every service that the library provides is going to be on the empowered level of the spectrum. It would be great to do that, but it would also be very time-consuming. When you're working on something directly for and with your community, however, be thinking of ways that you can capture their voice in the process of developing. Are you assuming their needs, or are you asking, what do you need? Now, before we move on to the next part of the playbook, which will show you how to plan your STEM programs, do we have any questions out here? I see a lot of love for the spectrum. That's great.
So this is Beth again, and I just want to reiterate because we had at least one question about it. So at the end, we will have quite a few different documents for you guys to download, and one of them is this playbook that she's talking about, which has all of the things, all of the guides and things in it. So that will be available, as well as the slides and some other great stuff. So.
Most definitely. I'm glad that everybody wants a chance to use this. One thing I would recommend is taking things that you've already done and just give it a trial run. In the next part, we're going to talk about a program planning form. And for that, I would definitely recommend use a program that you've already done, that you've already learned from, that you've already had a chance to kind of evaluate and think about, reflect on, and use it as a reflective practice. And then maybe in a few weeks or next quarter when you're planning, let's say, spring or summer programs, you'll already have that practice under your belt. All right, let's jump right in. Remember these? So let's step back to the outcomes that we discussed a little bit earlier. We're going to dive deep into these. The STEM Library Playbook is outcomes based. So that means that we call out the outcomes during the initial stages of planning, not at the end. Once you know your community and you can see a need that the library can help support, try to create a set of outcomes that you'll follow throughout the planning process. And then, what happens will probably look like nothing that you intended. It's important to know that libraries are dynamic learning spaces. So people are probably going to change it as they go along and innovate as they go along. So you should also feel empowered to adapt, even after you've created your outcomes. These are broad enough that you can continually iterate on the process. In the STEM Library Playbook, we outline a programming framework with 3 levels of increasing awareness of STEM, building on the outcomes from the After School Alliance. Each program level corresponds with an outcome, from initial interest and developmentally appropriate activities to developing new skills, and then to connecting STEM to leadership capacity and hopefully increased awareness of career pathways. As a learner moves through these programming levels, these outcomes build on individual and group learning. All right. I love this photo. For 2 years, we did a program at the Sylvan Way Library called PopUp Labs. And for me, I think that's a perfect example of an Excite program. This is Sophie. She just spent 20 minutes designing and building a bridge made from popsicle sticks and tape. She was so surprised to see that the 3rd attempt that she had at creating a bridge, that it was able to hold nearly 3 pounds. She was so excited. She developed an interest in bridge building that day. And she definitely started to think of other ways that she could challenge herself and build different things. Now, if our outcomes for this program are to develop an interest in STEM and STEM learning activities, or I like to do this, right? There are a few specific indicators or behaviors that you can look for to see how these outcomes are playing out. In Excite programs, look for youth actively participating in STEM learning opportunities. What do you notice in their language, excitement, and engagement? Were they engaged in what they were doing during the program, or did they kind of wander away? What do you notice about how well they are engaged in this? How do they talk about the learning that they're doing? Do they want to learn more? Excite is really meant to be the spark of something new. All right. In the next level, we have Explore program. And some of the most well-attended programs are those that can take a patron's interest and expand on it. Explore takes whatever is exciting to your community and digs a little bit deeper. Several branches in our system have done something called candy science. Doesn't that sound fun? So they take a, delicious treat and mix it with some super fun experiments. It can help participants explore chemistry on a really fun level. During this candy science program, the librarian and teen volunteers worked together to co-facilitate the program. They challenged the youth to predict what would happen before they began and asked them why they thought that, which I feel gives young participants a chance to try out the scientific method outside of the classroom. I can do this. All right. A librarian at our Bremerton branch shared how she started planning for the candy science program that she was going to run. She had heard from her community that they love candy, which I think many of us do, and they enjoy experiments where they can get a little messy. So she started to look up different candy experiments online. Maybe if some people have done it before, how much it would cost, and one very important thing, she started to think about how she could scale it. The program was for kindergarten through 5th grade. So in order to scale the program, she thought of some key elements. And these questions I feel like will help you when you're thinking about how to scale something. Maybe you see a really awesome thing on Pinterest and you go, wow, I really want to provide that for my community. Or maybe a volunteer comes to you and says, like, I can lead that. That's my favorite thing in the world. But how you're going to tailor it to your audience, I think these questions will help. So she asked herself, what are the steps involved? What level of coordination or dexterity is needed? Does the experiment need to be done precisely, or is there some wiggle room? And most of all, how safe is the experiment? Once she was able to create a scalable activity, she planned for about 25 participants and spent about $1 per person on supplies. Not bad. The program was very successful because she made the experiments group-led, so each person got a turn to take part in the experiment side of things if it was too dangerous for that particular audience. She made it developmentally appropriate. And it was very responsive to community interest. She had just talked to a patron who was, talking about how much they love messy experiments and how much they love candy. And she provided printouts that could be used later if the participant wanted to do the experiments again at home. And she actually developed those herself so that everybody would be able to kind of take something home with them. And candy is pretty magical, and the kids really enjoyed themselves. And the librarian helped participants explore the science behind the magic. The engage level is a bit more intensive than the other 2 levels of programming. At this stage, you have sort of a central idea that's holding everyone together, a big theme that you're talking about, a big question that you're asking. In Engage, it's all about offering a high-quality program over an extended period of time. In Kitsap, we've often interpreted that into free STEM camps. Take, for example, this summer's stop-motion animation camp. Here we saw the community engaging in many different levels. There were volunteers who spent months planning the sessions. There were librarians who were both mentoring the volunteers and who were also planning and facilitating the camp. They had participants who were engaging in content and then making their own content through recording videos and their animations. And then finally, they had a way to showcase their work. And so it was engaging to both the participants, to the librarians, to the volunteers, and also to families, to parents and guardians who were able to attend. Another way of doing that is to engage kids and families with co-learning activities. So you're kind of giving parents or guardians the chance to be the facilitator and learn with their young learner. Or bring in volunteers and interns. Another example from the summer was Break and Make Camp, where learners took toys apart and rebuilt them with their own designs. It had a lot of impact and was made possible through careful planning and iteration and being ready to adapt. Through these camps, we have a shared goal to help participants begin to find personal value in STEM. Week-long events like this might seem daunting to coordinate, but I would echo back to the roadmap. As you're considering embarking on a program like this, be thinking about how to connect with community partners. Who's out there that you could lean on? Volunteers, other mentors in your community who can help you make this happen. Break it up into smaller pieces and plan a little bit at a time. Be ready to delegate. That's a big piece of this. Create a schedule. And definitely be ready to roll with any changes that might happen along the way. Another way to approach this is to do a series of programs once a week over an extended period of time. So maybe once a week over 10 weeks. And when you're all finished with that program, what are some ways that you can celebrate or showcase with the participants and volunteers? Also, be thinking back to that scalability. How might you scale this kind of event for different audiences?
Hey, Megan, can I ask a quick question? This is Beth.
You bet. Yeah, what's going on?
Do you find that at that level it tends to be more for the older kids, or and the Excite is more younger kids, or are they across age groups?
I think it just depends on how you can scale the activity. So if we can go back a slide here, this event was actually for school-age children in 1st through 5th grade, I believe. And the Break and Make camp, where they were taking apart toys and putting them back together, that was for, I believe, kindergarten through 3rd grade. And in this next piece here, Megan McClung, who I'll be talking about in just a little bit, she was actually able to take neuroscience, which is a big, lofty subject, and create a program for 3 to 5-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I think it just depends on how you can scale the content.
Okay.
And that work is up to you all. You know your community best. And, if you need help, lean on other educators in your community, lean on parents and guardians, ask them what they need.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of beneath all of the levels of the framework is kind of this undercurrent that we call practice. It's 1 part program and 1 part learning environment. It's a set of protocols and tools that really helps you support young adult volunteers and interns, but it's also a way that you can strengthen your own facilitation skills. And through our internship program, we made everything interest-based. So after an intern is hired, they design a project based on community needs and observations, and then working closely with their direct mentor or with a team of mentors, they develop a project and implement it. When they're finished with the project, they share it out in a variety of ways. So like I was speaking about before, this is Megan McClung, and she was an intern at our Paulsville location. She was really, really interested in pursuing neuroscience in college. And she leveraged that interest into creating a really amazing brain science program for very early learners and their families. And she presented her work through a hands-on demonstration at the STEM showcase that takes place every year at our community's mall and brings together a ton of really great educators from across Kitsap County. It's kind of a fun way that we all get together. The practice tool can be used with volunteers, community partners, or maybe even with a group of patrons to help you create programs that respond to your community's interests. Again, it's all about the interests. Now, when someone comes to the library desk and they ask a question, we as library staff are ready to provide help, even if the question is not in a subject that we are experts in. The same basic principle is at the core of STEM programming. We don't need to be experts in order to be good mentors. That is at the crux of all of this. We don't need to be experts in order to be good mentors and good facilitators. So here's where I'm going to say something a little radical. STEM programming is not about using the cool equipment. It's not about the individual disciplines in science, technology, engineering, and math. The STEM programs that we create at the library are founded in amplifying interests. Yeah. Instead of focusing on technical skills, it's important instead to promote the 21st century skills, or the soft skills that you need to be successful in our new economy. Most importantly, we should also strive to model these 21st century skills. So we're going to go over these just a little bit more in depth. So the make or cognitive skills can be thought of as the building blocks of the 21st century skills. In a program, these might be built into specific technical know-how that you want participants to leave with. But keep in mind, content knowledge is only one of 9 of 21st century skills that we're calling out here. There's plenty more skills that you need to be successful in our new economy. But just looking and focusing on knowledge, it's not going to be able to expand that skill set. So you have to be able to think critically, make decisions, problem solve. And maybe in a program, you want someone to be able to be creative and innovate beyond the basics. Although these skills are intrapersonal in nature, the do skills are very much tied to social emotional learning because they're helping someone evaluate their position in their social realm. Kind of helps you be able to relate to others. Kind of like what we were talking about with the roadmap. Be aware of what you can bring to the table. And you can be more aware of your own abilities and your own strengths by evaluating yourself, taking some time to reflect, being open to learning new things. And here's one thing, initiative is a skill that is very hard to teach. But as mentors, I think we can help foster that in learners by just encouraging them to persevere. Being able to step back and evaluate allows learners to continually improve their skills. And the last trifecta of skills are the share skills, or interpersonal. These are so vital to our fast-paced and connected world. After-school programs in and out of the library should be reflecting the community partnerships we have developed. For the participants, we want to encourage empathy and teamwork, and we ultimately want people in our community to become leaders. In the last section here, I am thrilled to be able to highlight some fabulous examples from local Indiana libraries. And it's really no surprise to me that because, Make Do Share was created by a library for other libraries, that there are already libraries in Indiana, all across Indiana, that are already doing work like what we have seen, the patterns that we've observed. All right, so Deb Gaff from Bartholomew County Public Library recently presented a webinar on how she fosters school and public library partnerships. To me, this speaks directly to what we were going over with the Make Do Share roadmap tool. In her webinar, she talks about how public schools and public libraries have shared goals. She describes a day when the local school district was holding a meeting in one of the library conference rooms. And as part of the meeting, she was able to offer a tour and able to pitch some library programs. Now, some of you may be familiar with the Coderdojo program model. It's a great setup where people can come in and learn about coding and be supported by really great mentors and facilitators. Awesome. So glad to see somebody from BCPL. Fabulous. So Deb and the branch manager wanted to develop a strategy to reach out directly to a local elementary school to get a second group started in that system. And the school was really enthusiastic about starting the club because it would help them reach some of Indiana's science standards, which is great. It's a win-win situation, and it really shows how libraries and schools can work together as natural partners. What Deb is describing is an example of community discovery. She established a connection with the schools, and then when the time was right for expanding on the Coderdojo, she connected the dots to providing a program for and with the students at the school. It supports the library's mission and the school's mission. These kinds of partnerships take time, and limited staff capacity is a fact of life in virtually all libraries. So how do we do it? I think investing your time in discovering who in your community can help you learn more or do more is worthwhile. Working directly at schools or community centers on some of the programs that you do, that's not all you can do with this tool. You can also discover who you might not be reaching. What does your community need? What are some of your community's dreams? The roadmap can help you dream with your community. Together with local partners, library professionals like Deb are helping to create STEM learning ecosystems. And finally, I wanted to talk about digital climbers at Muncie Public Library. I think it's a great example of STEM programming that's very intentional, and it incorporates soft skills and technical skills. Participants in this program are working toward earning a badge, and they go through multiple challenges that stretch their learning. And it's definitely connected to digital literacy. They're able to take charge of their own learning. And I believe that Muncie Public Library has created an Engage Level program. It's driven by their participants. Youth are leveling up through challenges, and because they can kind of see their accomplishments in a physical form, because they actually have a magnetic board where people can move their badges up a literal mountain. It's fabulous. And I just believe that they can show that their learning has a purpose. This is probably the most helpful piece of the Make Do Share playbook. It features a program planning tool that will be available to download after this webinar today. And I would love to see how you all are able to use this. If you've done any work with a community partner, you could consider using this form as a way to communicate what you're planning. You could give this over to youth and programs already. You could give it to your teen advisory board. And even though you're probably going to go through plan B, C, D, E, etc., all through the alphabet, it's just really nice to be able to look back and see what you were thinking about when you first started putting a program together. Now, you can download our free curriculum and guide, the Make Do Share guide, on our website, krl.org/Make Do Share. It's also available in the webinar files. You can also contact me anytime. I'm on Twitter. You can email me or call me anytime that you have questions. And finally, I think in our last couple of minutes here, I'd like to open it up to you all. Do you have any questions whatsoever?
I just want to add really quickly for everybody that I had a point.
Oh, our reflection piece.
What's that?
Oh, the reflection worksheet too.
Yes. Okay, so I know that a number of you have signed up for the in-person workshops that I'll be doing in October and November, and that is awesome. There is a reflection worksheet for everybody, but particularly for those of you who are attending the in-person workshops. I'd like you to fill out the reflection worksheet. It's really designed just to kind of start getting you thinking, remembering what we talked about today, how it might apply to your library life when you enter the real world and exit the webinar world, and to kind of prepare you for the in-person workshops that we're going to be doing. So there's instructions on that reflection worksheet, but what I will eventually want you to do is fill that out and then email a copy of it to me. And like I said, the instructions are on the worksheet, so you don't have to memorize that. Um, I think it is not too late to sign up for the in-person workshops. We still have plenty of space at most of them. And so when I send out a link to this recording here in a week or so, hopefully less, I will include the link to sign up for the workshops if you're interested in doing that. Um, so let's see, the next question here, how do you recommend surveying?
Yes.
So that's for you, Megan. So I'm going to flip over here to all of the downloadable stuff and explain it, and then you can answer questions after that. Does that sound okay? And I know we're at 3 o'clock, guys, but if anybody can stick around to listen to questions being answered, that would be great.
And for those of you who have to head out, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for a warm welcome, and please feel welcome to reach out to me anytime. It was great having you all here.
Yeah. So on this downloadable, up at the very top, LEU file share, we have some different handouts. The your name _ make do share guided reflection is that guided reflection document that I'm asking you to fill out if you're attending the in-person workshop. Down at the bottom is the LEU certificate, and the PowerPoint is this first STEM Indiana with the numbers after it file. I believe this make do share PDF is the actual manual itself. And if you attend an in-person workshop, we're hoping to have some physical handbooks to give you there also. We're still working that out. But I'm going to turn it over to Megan to answer any remaining questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rebecca, you asked, how do you recommend surveying community interests and collecting that information? Did we use an online form? Was there one method that was more effective than others? So, first of all, that is a major challenge, and I appreciate you asking that because I think, while it is probably the most important work that we do, it can be a real challenge. So I would recommend, first of all, getting to know a community group. Go attend a community group, not as a presenter or as someone who is bringing in library programs or pamphlets or flyers or anything. Just go to a group and get to know some people. Get your name to a face. You see what I mean? And get the face to a name. And once you're able to really establish some strong community companions, is what I like to call them, set up regular meetings with those people because they're very often they're working directly with people who you're not reaching because either they have library anxiety, maybe they have some fines. We actually just recently went fine free in Kitsap. Oh my gosh, amazing! And we've had so many people return to us. But I mean, having fines is a real barrier, and people really do become afraid of the library. And you don't want to do that. You want to be someone who's out there in the community showing that you actually really do work for them. So first and foremost, establish some strong relationships. Once you do that, then you can begin doing community conversations. So having some guided questions. You could do a survey that's kind of more of an interview style or a focus group. And within the Make Do Share guide, we actually have some really helpful guided questionnaires for how to lead your community conversation. We also have some really helpful guides on doing a focus group with youth. So really just listening in and taking notes. It's actually really helpful to go with 2 people if you can afford it, because you can have one person really in the moment and really paying attention, looking people in the eye, listening, and you can have someone else who's taking notes. It's a little bit harder to take notes and listen, as I'm sure that you have experienced. So really, the conversations that you have and the relationships that you make, those are the most important ways of doing it. If you're kind of strapped on time, an online survey can work. You could try a poll on Facebook or on some other social media that your community uses. You can certainly um, try to lean on your community partners and see if they might be able to offer a survey during one of their meetings. Um, but definitely focus on the relationships first, and then everything else will fall into place. And I really believe in you. And if you need any help along the way, please feel welcome to reach out to me. I hope that helps with your question.
Great. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much.
I also wanted to mention we do have an evaluation. It is the third box down in the middle that says survey link. I know we have a lot of information on this page. For those of you who might be watching a recording of this after the fact, please be aware that we plan on linking all of these downloads to our website where the archive trainings are located. So you should be able to have all that information right there for you. Somebody said that they were having problems typing in the locked document of your name, make, do, share, guided reflection. You should be able to, once you get into it, sometimes it opens up in like a view only. It kind of looks like it's split across two tables. You need to enable the editing, and you can also do this by going to view and select like the print layout. And then there are little boxes into which you can type. Even though the rest of the document is locked, you should be able to type in the section that is highlighted in between brackets. If you really have trouble with this, you can also email me. I will put my email. Actually, my email is up on the screen. So just shoot me an email and I can potentially send you a different copy. We can figure it out. Okay. Any other questions for Megan before we sign off?
You can't see me, but I'm smiling.
Yeah, I want to thank Megan because this has been wonderful and we really appreciate her help and her time to do this. She's really put in some, you could see she did her research about Indiana and it was wonderful. And I'm going to be counting on her. She's going to help me design these in-person workshops too. So they will be coming at least partially from the source.
That is really exciting. I can't wait for the in-person trainings. Those are going to be really great. You all are not going to want to miss that.
All right. Well, I think we don't have any questions. People are saying thank you. Sandy says she can't get it to work. Yeah, you might have
thank you, everybody.
Save the document, go to save as, try that, and then see if you can type in it after that. Okay. All right. We're going to sign off. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.